Okay.
Hello, sir.
You are a student, not you don't have to work. What you have to solely focus on is your academic task, right?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello. Long, yeah.
Sir, we cannot hear you clearly, sir.
Oh, some have the internet. Okay, អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាស្ដាប់ឮវិញមើលទៅមកដឹងថាអត់ឮគ្រប់គ្នាឬយ៉ាងម៉េចព្រោះអ៊ីនធឺណិតខ្ញុំជួនកាលវាមានបញ្ហាវា unstable ឬក៏ poor internet connection អីចឹងតែអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាប្រហែលជាអ្នកណាខ្លះដែលពិបាកស្ដាប់អីជួយប្រាប់ខ្ញុំផងណាមិនខ្ញុំ reconnect វាឡើងវិញតែឥឡូវស្ដាប់បាននៅ
ស្ដាប់បានច្រើនប៉ុន្តែវីដេអូនៅគាំង
អូចឹងខ្ញុំបិទហ្មងព្រោះទៅហើយវាអាច slow នៅពេលដែលបើកវីដេអូជាទូទៅអញ្ចឹងណាអូខេ
Yes
អូខេអញ្ចឹងមែនតើទៅ I believe that you know how to deal with the current situation. If you are a student, what you're supposed to pay your full attention to is your academic task, right? Assignment. For my course, you have a lot of assignment, right? So I believe that you are not too afraid to sing about something unnecessary. But I believe that you know how to balance, your your academic tasks and your everyday life activity that can be good for your house. So maybe I do something enjoyable, pleasant activity, or do some sort of indoor exercise activity. Okay, so you are doing well. Okay, everything will be okay. We may come back to a new normal, right? New normal có lo đấy này. You tend to care more about your health, be more clean, right? Think about hygiene and your health is something good as well. Okay, so I think it should be time for us to begin our discussion. Okay, so today we will discuss chapter 3. Okay, so let me share the slide with you all. Tại này nó khi miền sum nuôi ấy, tại tôi chỉ assignment để nhóm tạo ấy nè, bộ chụp sắp ra coi tới group 1 video the presentation hay miền video project thôi nè, tại vì ai chụp đang work with your team members, okay, so you can discuss with your teammates to share some part, okay, to work on, but you may do individual research and then come to talk with one another. That's một topic nữa mình. Nhưng mình guided question mà chúng này đây nhưng mình trong bài thảo you need to strictly follow all the guided question then actually you can use them in order to work on your projects. Chẳng deadline due date với nơi you đó bên tay còn thôi. I strongly encourage you to start working on the video projects as early as possible. Okay, so because you may need to spend a lot of time, especially regarding the working on the video contents, editing the video. Chúng ta learn to acquire new skill, còn nói về digital skill mỗi đại song khăn đấy,อย่างai khỏi đấy giờ ai use will you be the ở về nó bàn lồng thề tràn can be new skill for you. តែអ្នកខ្លះក៏គាត់ធ្លាប់ប្រើធ្វើជាវីដេអូច្រើនហើយអាចស៊ាំមើលទេប៉ុន្តែយើងមានពេលគ្រប់គ្រាន់ទេណាឡៃ10សប្តាហ៍ពីពេលទៅនៅយូរដែរ Sorry. Oh. Okay, so can you see the screen I share with you all?
Yes, like. Yes, like.
Okay, so today we will discuss chapter 3, right, with regard to democratic chain and democratic persistence. Right? So when we talk about democratic chain, it means that we may discuss on the different way of democracy, right? So far we have known by the 3 way of democracy that in each way of democracy there could be a large number of states whereby they transform from their previous political system into democratic form of government, right? But when we talk about democratic persistence, it can be democratic consolidation. So we will discuss the 4 stages of the process of democratization. Okay. So when we talk about democratic persistence or democratic consolidation, it means that the democratic arrangement in that context can be more stable, right? Can be embedded, can be well established, or can be institutionalized. It can be widely accepted by, different group in the society. So it means that they accept the democratic means as as the way in order to serve or to regulate the behavior or to regulate any differences among different groups. Okay, and there is no one or any groups who oppose the democratic, practice in that society. So that's why we can say that it is well established or embedded, right? Or it can be stable, right, for democracy. So it will not move backwards to undemocratic practice. All right, so by this, the contents that we are going to discuss today can be the transition toward democracy. Okay, so we will look at some important conducive factors and also undermining factors to democratic change. So we look at the different way of democracy as well. And second, we will discuss the limit of democratization. So what could be the some sort of challenges that each state may encounter while they work on the democratization process. Okay. And last but not least, we will discuss the some important theories in terms of modernization theory, cultural theory, and institutional theory that can be used to explain the democratic change and democratic consolidation. Okay. Right, so let's begin with the first part, right, regarding the contributing factors in democratic change and persistence. So can anyone from group 1, briefly explain the contributing factors to the democratic change or democratic consolidation?
Yes, sure. So for the contributing factor in democratic change, I have divided into 3 factors. First one is economic development. Second one is the right of property owning in middle class, and the last one will be potential of political system. Economic development is an ambitious concept in which it includes many complex processes such as industrialization, urbanization, stratification, and the rising level of wealth, literacy, and education. Second, for the right of property owning in middle class, it also plays a fundamental role in moderating impact on social conflict. It also contributes to economic development and democratization because this group from the middle class, they tend to demand for personal freedom and the right to participate in the government affairs. And they also demand for right to receive education, healthcare, and improving their living standard. Moreover, they also form their own association and volunteer organization in which form a backbone of civil society that further contribute to the democratization. And last but not least, the potential of political system here we refer to the ability of how government satisfy citizen need and demand. It is also another important factor that contribute to the democratic change. It's meaning that the government should investigate on the important idea of in human affairs about liberty, equality, and justice. And however, on the democratic persistence are seen in many ways. In order to achieve economic development, democracy can jeopardize by growing inequality among the rich and the poor, meaning that the rich will get richer and the poor will be suffer. In the transitional period, corruption may be seen as the main problem because the rich because the bureaucracy may remain occupied by the same people who used to serve at the undemocratic system. Yet citizens may evaluate the political system that it failed to meet their satisfaction and it led to unsatisfied demand. In the long run, democratic development will be failed if citizens are seriously dissatisfied with the political system of the government. That's all, Cha.
Okay, thank you so much for your very informative explanation. Okay, but I mean, not only contributing factor, but you also highlight some important and demanding factors to the democratic change, and especially democratic consolidation. Okay? Maybe group 2 need to send to group 1 who try to explain this part to all the classmates here. Okay? All right. So for this, you can see that there could be like so far it can be economic factors, it can be political factors, and also the social and cultural factors. Okay, so there could be different explanation regarding the democratic change or democratic consolidation in different contexts. Okay, but generally, in spite of this, differences or complication, we can see that there could be some pattern of transition toward democracy, right? So this can be something important that we can learn from, and actually we can use to discuss about the pathways to the democratic change in some context. But one of which you can see that democracy can be best established in the economically developed country, like what we can see from the experience of the democratic change in the Western European states, right? When they, through this first and the second stage of the modern state development, that they can create institutional arrangement that can be conducive to promote the social and economic development in the second stage, right? The right of the nation state. So it boosts the economic prosperity in their context. And then you can see that the capitalist group the rise of the middle class people demand for political rights. So then you can see that it leads to the democratic change, right? So then we will discuss more in the the middle class theory that try to explain the correlation between the right of the middle class people and the democratic change in some context, especially like in European state, right? So in that sense, you can see many scholars try to conclude that economic development is a necessary condition for democracy, right? It can be true that you can see that because when we work on democracy, it means that the state needs to be responsive to the demand and the need of the people. And in that sense, you can see that the government needs to have a decisive impact on the policy formulation and policy implementation to serve the need and the expectation of the people, right? So they need economic resources. In that way, you can see that there could be some scholars who try to argue that the rise of the middle class people led to the economic development and ultimately led to democratization. By this, we will look at the middle class theory regarding the correlation between the rise of the middle class people and the democratization. All right, like your classmate already tried to explain some activity met by the capitalist group and all of those activities are, important for the democratic change, right? So basically, the middle class people have a strong link, right, between the political elite, because you can see that they can get access to the political leader because they are considered as the insider group, that they can get access to the political leader quite easier than the other group in society. And at the same time, they work closely with the majority of the working class people, right? Because to some extent, you can see that they represent the interests of those groups as well, and they can be the owner of any kind of industrial ownership, right? So actually, they control those working class people. By this, you can see that they play an important role, like they mediate any kind of need and interest between the political leader and the working class people, right? And secondly, you can see that in order to secure their economic position, right, and also the political power, you can see that the capitalist group or the rising middle class try to demand for political freedom and also the personal freedom, right, in order to participate in the government affairs. And third, you can see that they also press for education, healthcare, improve housing and geographical mobility to improve the quality of their workforce, like what we already discussed, that the capitalist group fund the state in order to work on the social and physical infrastructure, right? But on the one hand, you can see that they work for their own interest, but generally it benefits to the society as a whole. And that's why you can see that even though the majority of the working class people are aware of this or not, but actually because they benefit that's why they, to some extent, they tend to support the activity of the capitalist group in order to press the government in order to work on the social and physical infrastructure development, right? And one more, you can see that the middle class, right, want to form into group, right, or organization. But generally, you can see that they do this because they want to pursue their group interest, okay? But generally, this can be considered as the one of the effective ways, okay, in order to lobby the government, to put pressure toward the government, in order to work on the policy that really affect their groups, right? So that's why you can see that it can be considered as the backbone of the civil society that further stimulate the democratic change in the society, okay? And next, you can see that the middle class people, yeah, right, because they want to secure their interest in economic stability, right? So to secure their business environment and also to enhance their predictability in economic and social affairs, they want to engage more in the social and economic policy of the state, right? So they are actively involved in the shaping the social and economic policy. So by this, they can be well informed about what's supposed to happen, right, within a certain period of time, right? And also they want to have, like what we already see from the point number 2, that they want to secure their economic position and political power in order to make a moderating impact on social conflict. So they don't want to the government that can be too excessively powerful that they cannot challenge. So in that way, maybe the government can do whatever they want. So they don't want to have this kind of government. That's why they demand for some sort of political rights, that they can compete for public office, or they can vote for any political leader that they think they can work for, for their group interest. Okay. So in short, we can summarize that no bourgeoisie, no capitalist group, no democracy, right? But on the one side, maybe you can see that they do this for the benefit for everyone, right? To the benefit of the society. But generally, back to the past history, you can see that this capitalist class have their own or their hidden agendas, right? So actually, they do this because it can benefit to their economic interests or their political powers, right, that they want to have. But generally, we need to be thankful for what they have contributed to the democratic change in many society, right? Because the, it led to the a significant change in the way that a different group, right? Not only a specific group, but later you can see that everyone can have equal rights, right? Especially political rights. Okay, so in that way, you can see that the economic condition, right, led to the democratic change, right? Because when people can have a good economic condition in the society, so they demand for political rights, right? They involve this activity that ultimately led to democratic change in many societies, especially in the Western European states. Okay, but dictionary has some sort of limitation as well, because we cannot make a generalization based on the democratic model in the European state, right? Because there could be some cases that it led to a failure of democratic change or democratic consolidation, right? Or maybe in some context that you can see that it can be different, right? In terms of the way that there could be some other condition that happened first before economic condition that led to the democratic change. But one of which you can see that the best example that we can say democratic condition cannot lead to the democratic persistence, right? The democratic consolidation. We can look at the case of Germany. So Germany is one of the European state as well, right? The Western European states. But generally, you can see that their democracy fell as well, right? Because there could be some other condition or other factors involved, right? So you can see Germany could be one of the economically highly developed state, right? But they reverted to Nazi dictatorship in 1933, right? So generally, you can see that they cannot have a stable democracy, especially democratic consolidation. I mean, everyone will support democracy, right? Or every group will support democracy. So there could be some group who oppose democracy and revert to dictatorship. But generally, you can see that by this, we can say that economic condition alone cannot be strong enough, right? So we need to look at the constitutional design. We need to look at the institutional arrangement, or we need to have the different political actors like politicians, or even the people who need to have what we call ideal political culture that support the democratic practice in the society. So that's why you can see that in Germany during that time there could be a lot of problem. Even the economic condition itself, right? The Germany need to overcome the global economic issue and the political. There could be a lack of political consensus, or you can see that there could be a lot of political issue among different political parties, right? And allows the Nazi party or adult player in order to mobilize support from the people, and actually maybe they try to build some sort of great empire again, possibly, right? And they can use this reason to mobilize support of people, and people may want to have a demand. They demand for immediate change, right? Especially economic condition, and also in terms of the people's satisfaction, right, of the political system. So then you can see all of this can be put into account in order to consider why democracy in Germany fell during that time. Okay? But again, you can see that we cannot make a generalization that economic condition is the only factor that led to the democratic consolidation. And another case that we can look at is India, right? So like democratization preceded the industrialization. So it means that it does not mean that we need to have a good economic condition first before we establish democracy, right? So like in India, right, so after they got independent from the UK, so there could be some sort of economic and social or political legacy from the political master, and then actually they believe that democracy can be an ideal form of government that can serve the need and the expectation of the people. So they adopt the democracy before they can experience the economic development. So in that case, you can see that democracy can lead to the economic development later as well. So by this, from this point, we can say that we cannot use economic condition or economic development alone as the precondition that lead to the democratic change or democratic consolidation, right? And one more thing, even though you can see that economic development can be important, right, especially in the early stage, because if you look at the four important phases of the democratization, so basically, especially in the second or in the emerging phase or in the advanced phase, so generally you can see that the material condition need to be responsive to the need of the people, right? So without a good economic development, so maybe the people may evaluate the performance of the government, or maybe they evaluate the government system in the negative way, or maybe they don't support the that kind of political or government system any longer, right? So that's why you can see that it cannot be generalized, right? So it does not mean that economic factor count for the market or democratic consolidation, right? For example, like the case of the Germany, right? So they can fail, right? The democracy can lead to a failure as well. All right, so by this we should avoid one-sided explanation, right? Like economics condition alone is not enough, okay, to explain the democratic change, right? So it lead to the misinterpretation or misleading information, right? And similarly, we should not solely focus on the power of the political structure and the institution. Even you can see that there could be a good constitutional design, right? But generally, we need to have a political leader who support the democratic practice as well, right? So you can see that to some extent, for example, like in Germany, like they may have got a constitution or institutional arrangement, but because there could be some powerful political leader that oppose the democratic practice, so they may move backwards to the authoritarianism, right? So in that way, you can see that we need to have different political actors that favors the democratic practice. Okay, they need to have good political culture. And in that sense, you can see that we cannot just rely on the economics or political factors in order to explain the democratic change or democratic consolidation. So actually, we can look at the social and cultural factor as well, right? So actually, we need to have people who have a good political culture, that they have enough knowledge about the political process of the government work, right? And they know how to participate meaningfully, and they know how to critically analyze or evaluate the performance of the government and also the policy of the government, right? So by this, I mean that they can know how to support the government, or they know how to demand for political reform. Okay, so by this you can see that it is important that we need to have a meaningful political participation from the people or from different group in the society as well. Okay, so if they just demand a lot from the government and they just participate, and actually they just care about their group interests and they don't care much about the post-material value for the public interest, and then what can we say that their participation can be meaningful for the political outcome? So actually, you can see that it will not reflect the real value of democracy. That democracy work for the interest of the majority of the people as the whole. But actually, if they participate just to serve their group interest, and then you can see that they may capture the government, right, in order to adopt the policy to favor the group. In that sense, you can see that it will not be responsive to the will and the need or the expectation of the people, right? So about this, we can see that there could be another explanation by same was Martin Lipset. He is American political sociologist that contribute a lot to the explanation of the democratic change in different contexts. So at first, he also places a great emphasis on the economic condition, but later he tends to think that because of the economics development or the technological development, so it led to the modernization in the society. It means that it led to the fundamental changes in different area in the society, right? So in that way, you can see that it will, it will support the democratic values that it can, serve the need of the people, and at the same time, it can improve the, the material condition, okay, in terms of social and physical infrastructure development, and it's also create a good political culture and political participation from different political actors. So all of this, you can see that it have the fundamental change in the other area. So in that way, you can see that later you can see he point the idea that he point out that the idea and the value of the people, right? So it also requires people to be to have a good knowledge in politics. They are well educated, okay, and they may have some sort of ideal value, right? So ideal value can be different from material value or economic values of an individual. But when we talk about ideal value, it is related to the public interest, right? It's like the protection of people's rights, equality, like environmental protection, social justice, fighting against corruption, okay, or fighting against discrimination or racism, and so on and so forth, gender equality, right? So all of this can be the post-material value, right? So it means that they participate, but you can see that it will not affect their individual interests, but for the interest of the society as a whole, right? So this can be something important as well, right? So this can be something that they really expect, or they really want the government in order to deal with those important needs for the people, right? So it means that they want to have the government that can make a decisive impact on the policy formulation and policy implementation that satisfy their need and their demand, especially to serve the ideal value, right? Good quality of life for everyone in the society, not the individual interest. So that's why you can see here when we talk about the political values in, democracy or democratic state. So actually, we want to have ideal values, right? So we need to have ideal political values that focus on the public interest rather than, material interest or economic interest of an individual, right? So basically, you can see that this can be related to the human affairs, human right protection, liberty, equality, justice, and social justice, or it can be the environmental protection, or like discrimination, racism. We need to eliminate those structural tensions, structural conflict. Okay. So in that way, you can see here, what we can conclude here is we want to have a good combination of economic, political, social, and cultural factors that can be good for the for a stable democracy, right? Probably here, even though we know that it's important to have a good combination of economic, political, social, and cultural factors, it's somehow unclear whether to what extent that we need a sufficient amount of those factors in order to combine together in order to produce a stable democracy, right? So it very completely different from the way that we cook any food, that we know a specific amount of ingredient that we can put place together, and then we can produce a delicious food. So unlike that way, so actually you can see that we just work, right, gradually, right? We need to have a true willingness or commitment in order to work on the democratic change, right? Democratization in order to improve those area, like in terms of economics factors, social, cultural, and also political factors in order to produce a stable democracy. All right, and secondly, so if you have any question, feel free to interrupt me, okay? Okay, group 2, actually, the previous, you know, your classmate already have answered this question. Okay, so I think that we can jump to the discussion altogether. Right, so let's take a look at the undermining factors. So generally, you can see that generally, you can see that the challenges may be aligned with the contributing factor as well in terms of, you know, economic factors, or it can be related to the political factors, or it can be related to social and cultural factors, right? So this can be in general, right? But specifically, we can look at some specific issue that, you know, every society are struggling for dealing with those situations, dealing with those structural tension, right? So generally, you can see that it can be found in every society that they work on their democratic change, right? The process of democratization. So generally, you can see that they need to change the behavior of the senior position in the bureaucracy that does not favor the democratic, you know, practice. Okay, so basically, it can be the problem because why the senior position in bureaucracy can create a challenge or a barrier in the democratic chain or democratic practice, because generally you can see that this group of people have the you know, the responsibility to implement the policy of the government directly, right? Generally, you can see that success or not regarding the policy implementation can be based on the senior position of bureaucracy, right? And generally, you can see why they create the problem, because even though there can be there could be a new leader, right? New head of the government, right? So that can be newly elected every 4 years or 5 years, but for the senior position in bureaucracy, you know, remain in their office, right? And remain in their position. They are not replaced, right, until they got retirement, right? So they have to work in their office in a long period of time. So, but you can see that they are they know how to play around with the system. They may create into network like nepotism, or maybe clientelism, right, that support their group interest, right? Or maybe there could be a problem because they can be skillful, right? They are expertise in their area because they are knowledgeable in the area that they work. Because generally you can see that they are carefully selected. They need to compete with the other, and they need to take a state examination and so on and so forth, right? So in that way, you can see that they know how to work on the system, right? So generally, you can see that they can be called the public servant, right? The public servant, but in real practice, to some extent, they can be called the master of the state, not the public servant, right? So not the servant of the state, but the master of the state, right? So they, to some extent, they play around with that. So you can see that the government, to some extent, can be very difficult to deal with that, right? So that's why there could be some sort of public administration reform, right, to ensure that they can work in order to ensure the effectiveness or efficiency of the public service delivery. Okay, so far you can see that there could be a political appointment toward the senior position in bureaucracy. You mean political appointment, for example, like in the US, right? Because this can be one of the important things. So there could be thousands of positions, you know, can be appointed after the presidential election. Okay, but in some context, if we support the political appointment, it can be the problem because it can lead to the corrupt practice as well. Okay, and maybe it can be nepotism or clientelism, right? Just only those who favor their political activity or political agenda and involved in their political campaigns will get the position, or maybe just only those who have the network or can be the family members can get this high-ranking position. Okay, so that can be the problem. That's why we also try to consider about the what we call new public management, right? How we can governs the public sectors or control the public sector, like the business company as well, that we may have the higher contracts. Okay, so if they cannot perform effectively, they can be removed, right, from their position, like the business company. But we will discuss more when we move to the bureaucracy, right, in possibly chapter 7 or 8. Okay, and then we will discuss more about the new public management as well. Okay, but again, you can see all of this can be important. Like we need to, even you can see if you look at the rectangular strategy in our context. So public administrative reform can be one of the prioritized area as well, okay, in order to improve or reform the public sectors, okay, the public service delivery. Also corruption, right? The corruption can be something important, because if they cannot deal with the corruption, can they boost the economic development for the state, right? And social and economic problems, right? In general, you can see that we need to have a group of different group of people. Also, we can say different political actors in that context, you know, that work for the you know, ideal ways to participate meaningfully in the based on the democratic principle, right? So we need to have what we call civic culture, right? Civic culture here means the people are knowledgeable about politics, right? So they can evaluate the performance of the government, whether they supposed to support the policy of the government, or they want to have make some sort of you know, some sort of reform in some area, right? So actually, they need to know how to do that. Okay. And at the same time, they can participate freely if they wish to do so. But the point is that in politics, if we want to have a stable democracy, we don't need to have different groups in order to participate all the time, right? If they participate all the time, like maybe to some extent, it will block the, you know, the government affair, that they cannot produce any policy, right? So actually, maybe it blocked this social and economic development, right? And this because maybe they just participate in order to favor their group interests, right? So again, like what I told you, we need to have people who tend to focus more on ideology, right? When they participate just only to favor the public interest, the interest of the society, rather than just an individual interest or group interest. Okay, so this can be something important, that we need to deal with some sort of those important things, that we need to build some sort of what we call good social and political orientation, right? And we need to deal with the situation based on the high level of pragmatism or tolerance, right? Acceptance by different groups, and they believe that this can be something important for the society. Okay? All right, and by this, again, you can see that citizen, right, also important, right? We need to have people who can evaluate, right, the political system, right, whether it is going on the right track, or what could be something wrong that they demand for change, right? So then they can provide some sort of constructive feedback, right, in order to make a positive change as well. Okay, but generally here you can see that at least you can see that the government need to be able to satisfy the need of the people, right? And maybe the government, as it can be true in many society, the government have their resource scarcity as well. We need to acknowledge the weakness and limitation of the government. But it's also important to prove that the government can be committed to work on those important things, right? They are dealing with those important things. They are making some sort of gradual reform, right? So in that way, it is important that the government need to explain, right, to the people about what they have, right? That can be their challenges, and in order to mobilize support, and in order to build high level of trust toward the people, so people can continue to support the political system. But if in the long run, right, maybe in a short period of time, like 1 term or 2 terms, but if the situation cannot be improved, and then maybe people are not patient enough in order to wait for any longer. So actually, they may demand for political change immediately, right? So you can see political revolution can be follow as the result of that, right? So by this, you can see that in the long run, no system can survive, right? It's many people are seriously dissatisfied, right? Okay, so it is important, like your friend already mentioned, that we need to prove that democracy can, reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. If we allow us to have a large interval between the rich and the poor, and then you can see that the rich get richer and the poor suffer seriously, and then what do you expect to have or happens? Possibly you can see that the poor will fight to, demand for the structural change, right? Like to change the political system, right? Because they believe that the political system just treats their group differently, right? And then that's why they suffer a lot. And then you can see political revolution can be followed, right? As what Karl Marx already mentioned. Okay, so let's move to next part regarding the 3 ways of democratization. So can anyone from group 3 briefly explain this?
Yes, teacher. So for the first wave is from the mid of 19th century to the 1920s, and it's coincided with the rise of many Western nation states that have transformed into the mass democracies. And for the second wave, begin after the Second World War until the early of 1960s, and for the democratization of the second wave depend on political and economic opportunities as well as the result of decolonization. And for the third wave is from 1975 to the end of the 20th century, follow the spread of democracy in Latin America and Asia, and the disintegration of the Soviet Union. That's all, teacher. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for your explanation. All right, so by this, generally you can see that there could be different way of democratization, right? So according to the mass movement or political revolution or color revolution in different countries, but generally we try to categorize those mass movement or political revolution into three important waves. So by this you can see that Samuel Huntington, he is the Americans political political comparativist who work on the the different way of democracy. So he classified into 3 ways of democracy so far, right? So far just categorize into 3 ways of democracy. So it can be easier for us to understand the the certain period of time or from the specific context that they have some sort of a transition toward democracy, right? So but this in the first wave, you can see that it began from 1828 to 1926, like almost 100 years, right? In this way of democracy, it can be very long, right? So by this you can see that in this way of democracy, there could be many Western European states, right, that move toward democracy as a result of the right of the nation state, right? That they experience the a social and economic development as the result of the their state institutional arrangement and the nation building process in the second second stage of the modern state development, right? So in this period, you can see that many Western nation states were transformed into mass democracy as the result of the common process of the economic development and nation building, right? So by this, you can see that the country that led to the first democracy change can be the US, right? After their political revolution in their context. So they can be the first country to move to the democratic chain, right? So they provide some sort of political rights to specific group, to Vimin, right? During that time, just only Vimin can participate in the government decision process, of especially the capitalist group. But it can be followed by, the some Western European state like France, like UK, Germany, Italy, right? And generally, you can see in this stage, at its peak, there could be 29 democratic states after the collapse of the German Empire or Austro-Hungary, and also the Ottoman empires, right? So there could be 29 democratic states during that time. But generally, you can see that it reached an end in 1922, right? So when Italy reverted to fascism, right? When Mussolini rose to power, and then you can see that there could be some other context move backward to democracy as well. Okay, so in that way, you can see that it dropped from 29 to just only 12, right? Just only 12. But you can see that the interval from the first wave democracy to the second wave is not too long as well, like 20 years later, right? After the end of the Second World War, so we can witness another wave of democracy. So there could be a remarkable number of states, whereby they move towards the democracy. So at the end of the World War II until 1962, right, in this fair democracy. But generally, you can see that it can be mainly resulted from the decolonization, right, after the end of the World War II. There could be many newly established states, right? Newly independent state that got independent from their colonial master, right? And then they tend to believe that democratic government can be responsive to the need of the people or can serve the interest for the society. Right, so democratization in the second wave depended on the political and economic opportunity, right? In some context, that they got the independent from their colonial master, and also it can be based on different intervention for some failed state that suffer from the civil war-torn situation, right? Or the war of independence, right? So when they struggle for independence, when they got the independence, they, established democratic government. So in this way of democracy, you can see that there could be 36, right, at its peak, right? So it increased up to 36 recognized democracy. But it reached an end when some places revert to authoritarian rule in 1960, for example, like Greek and Soviet country in Latin America, for example, like Argentina, right? They move backward to authoritarianism. Right? So basically, you can see that it dropped from 36 recognized democracy to just only 30, but just only 6 countries, whereby they move backwards to undemocratic practice. But generally, if you look at the reason, the main reason that why there could be some country who used to practice democracy move backward to authoritarianism. So generally, you can see that there could be many scholars who try to, try to highlight the key important reason that there could be, a mass struggle, right? Like a mass movement in some context in order to pursue for the political equality among different groups in the society, especially they demand for suffrage, right? The right to vote of the women group. They want women's group to participate freely or equally like men as well. So in that sense, you can see that the democracy tend to be disappear, right? Tend to be in some context because of the mass movement or kind of the general kind of like wide struggle in order to demand for the political rights for women, right? All right, so that's why you can see that democracy in the first wave and the second wave cannot be diffuse. Diffuse. I mean, it can spread out into different direction, because you can see there could be some sort of restriction, right? Just only some specific group that can participate. So it is not widely recognized by the state in order to work on the inclusiveness principle that everyone or every group can participate freely, right? In the third way, you can see that just like in ladder, right? So the third wave can come, and you can see that they consider as the most remarkable milestone that led to the democratic change, in different corner around the world, right? So you can see from 1975, you can see that there could be many states, transform into a democratic government. But generally, you can see it can be based on the reason that there could be a remarkable number of states whereby they move toward democratic change. You can see that the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? So when the Cold War come to an end, so in 1989, so it proved that the democracy can be superior than the communism, right? So because Soviet Union could be the one who lose in the Cold War, right? So then you can see that there could be many states witness that democracy could be the most ideal form of the government that can serve the will or the interest of the people, right? And it can prove the economic development and so on and so forth, right? So there could be many states, or transform their government system into democracy. Right, so in this period, you can see that there could be a number of non-democratic countries of Latin America and Asia, right? Frequently on the basis of mass movement, right? So actually, like what I already told you, right? So generally, democracy can be based on the internal restructuring. It's not based on the will of the political leader, right? So there could be a strong mass movement from the people. So the government cannot, ignore that. So actually, they need to be responsive to the demand of the people for the civil and political liberty, and then they provide some sort of civil and political right to those people, and then they start working on or start establishing the democratic arrangement, okay? And create some sort of peaceful opposition or election in their society. All right, so as an example, you can see in Asia, we have South Korea or Philippines, right? And also it can be as a result of the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? So there could be a large number of Central and Eastern European states that established democracy in their country. Okay? So that by this you can see, for example, like there could be a mass pressure and opposition group demand for the political rights, right, for in their society. So for example, like in Poland or Ukraine or Hungary, right? But generally you can see that in this period of time, you can see that why it can be conducive to the widespread of democracy around the world. Or how can we say that, in another word, why is the democracy that that can, in if we ask in each way, right? In what way of democracy that allows the firm root of democratic arrangement in their society? So the question is, the answer will be the third way of democracy, right? The third way of democracy allowed the allow a firm root, right? So like the a firm root of democratic arrangement in the society. So I mean that it's not likely to move backward, right? And there could be some reason that we can use to support our answer, because you can see first, democracy during this third wave tend to focus more on the inclusiveness principle, right? Inclusiveness principle that allows the free and fair competition, right? So it means that everyone can be, can participate, right, in the political activities. So there is no exclusion for any group in the society. Even women can participate freely, right? And secondly, you can see that now, right, the US won the Cold War, right, and proved that democracy can be superior, can be superior than the communism or other types of government, right? And in that way, you can see that in absence of the political ideology contestation from the Soviet Union, so it allowed the US to spread the democratic ideology around the world, right? So you can see that there could be many states, revert to the most toward the democratic change during that time. And now you can see up to now there could be more than 70%, right? Because just only among 195 states, just only around 40 states that practice non-democratic government, right? Okay, so in that sense, you can see that the third wave democracy can be conducive for the democratic change. And to some context, you can see that it led to the democratic consolidation. It can lead to liberal democracy. We also expect the fourth wave of democracy as well, right? So especially in 2011 to, right? So when there could be an Arab Spring, right? So, but it came to an end shortly, right? It's like in 2012. So, and then we cannot have the another way of democracy, especially in the Middle East country. So far we haven't got the fourth wave democracy yet, right? But we don't know whether or not in the future the democracy can be widespread, or a mushroom around, we can say, in every corner of the world. Okay, so far, do you have any questions? Okay, let me move on. So now we will discuss about the fourth state, the four phases of the democratization. Generally, you can see that democratization can be the process, right? It's a long-term process, right? We can say a never-ending process, right? And you can see that it takes some time. Even you can see that the some liberal democracy right now, you can see, for example, like UK, US, or some Western European state, their democracy exists in the 18th century, right? So far like 200 years. So by this you can see that to some extent we cannot demand for a democratic arrangement or democratic change for newly established state in order to write the liberal democracy like what they have, right? So actually we need to have enough time, or we need to have enough resources. But the point is that you can see that there could be some challenges that we need to into account, that we move from one stage to another, right? So we will see how we can move from the emerging phase until the phase of consolidation. Right, so about this, I want to have a contribution from group 4. Can you explain the first two phases, the democratic, democratic change, or the process of democratization?
Explain the first two phases of democratizations, initial phase and emerging phase. So for initial phase, political reform is the main goal after the increase in demand for independence because of oppositions toward the ruling elite and undemocratic arrangement are mobilized. And for emerging fresh, due to the liberty is still remaining the main concern, the old system of undemocratic arrangement is empirical and no longer functions. We cause to have new arrangement are set up along with a new constitutions is proclaimed and general election are introduced. That's it for group 4.
All right, thank you so much, the representative from Group 4, who explained these two phases briefly and can be understood by that. Okay. All right. So basically, you can see that the initial stage, right? The initial stage, you can see that democracy can be found as a result of the internal restructuring. So you can see it does not based on the wish of this central elite or political leader, right? So generally, you can see that because if they practice democracy, it means that they give more political opportunities for public office. So actually, they can see that not the political leader want to give this kind of opportunity to different group in the society because they want to maintain their power as well, right? So generally, you can see in every context, generally, this can be based on the people who really struggle for the political rights, or they want to participate in the government decision process. Okay. So in that way, you can see that they start opposing toward the ruling elite or undemocratic arrangement. They want to have the state institution arrangement that can have a checks and balances system, right? So everyone can participate or involved in the political affair. So this can be found in the initial stage, right? Especially you can see based on the explanation in the rise of the middle class people that led to the democratic change. Right? But in the emerging first, you can see that after the there could be different group in the society, right? The masses or the public are demand for more liberty. So you can see the government cannot, take it for granted. So, but they allow for the peaceful competition. So in that way, you can say that general election can be introduced, right? So it means that peaceful opposition can be legitimate, right? So you can form into political party and compete for public office, right? And by this, a new constitution can be designed, right, to state clearly about the relationship between the government and the people and how to ensure the transition of power and so on and so forth, right? But basically, you can see during this stage, there could be some sort of restriction. So liberty still restricted by the government, right? So you can see in this stage, there could be a lot of restriction, right? So even there could be some sort of exclusion, right, of some group to participate in politics. All right, and moving on, so we can discuss the last two stages of the process of democratization. So can anyone from Group 5 explain the last two stages?
Sure, about the last two stages is about the event phase is talking about the freedom is already given and focus on the successes of the new democratic state because freedom is not enough. So the state must provide economic and public services performance to satisfy public interest. Also, they have to emphasis on equality of right and opportunity are increasingly significant. The last one is about phase of consolidation is talking about the institution and system are well organized to provide and serve the expectations of the majority. Also, a balance between freedom and equality is weak and widely accepted. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you so much. The representative from Group 5 will try to explain that point, the last two stages of the process of democratization. So I think you can see that in the early stage, in the stages, political rights and civil liberty are important, right? So actually, you can see that how they work on, the state arrangement or the constitutional design, or to work on the electoral system, right? That serve the need of the people that they demand for political rights. But in the next stage, right? So actually, it's move beyond the civil liberty and political rights. So in the advanced stages, you can see that people demand more for the material condition, right? So you can see, of course, liberty can be important. Actually, they still struggle for that, right? But at the same time, you can see that they also pay more attention to the material condition. So I mean that the interest group need to be certified. So it means that the government need to work on their social and economic policy that serve interests of different groups in the society. So in that way, the government need to work on the economic performance, right? Economic development for the state to ensure that they can have enough economic resources in order to redistribute those resources into the need of the different groups. And at the same time, they need to improve the public service performance. They need to work on the public administration to ensure the effectiveness and efficiency of the public service delivery to serve the need and the satisfaction of the people. So in that way, we can see that in this stage, you can see that there could be a great emphasis that placed on the equality of right and opportunity, right? So people are demanding, started demanding for the equality of rights, right, in terms of a political right, a social and economic rights. So actually, you can see that they want to focus more on the endorsement policy of the state that support the different group in the society, the different part of the population, in order to have the equality of the social, economic, and political opportunity and rights. Okay, so and then if the state are capable in order to respond to the need of the people, maybe they can move from this stage, and then they can arrive at the stage of the phase of consolidation, right? So if they can arrive at this stage, you can see that basically, because you can see that the democratic arrangement can be institutionalized. I mean that they can widely accepted by the people, right? Because the democracy can fulfill and satisfy the need of different group in the society, and basically you can see that the government are capable enough in order to make a decisive impact on the policy formulation and policy implementation. And the system is able to meet the demand and the expectation of large part of the population, right? And basically, you can see that the government of the policy of the government tend to focus more on the liberty and equality that can be balanced, right? So it means that to some extent they reduce the gap between the rich and the poor, right? So, but this maybe to some extent the government may be responsible to support the underprivileged group, the poor people, right? That they need the support from the state. So that's why you can see that in this stage, or if they can arrive at the phase of consolidation, it means that they can have a stable democracy or liberal democracy, right? So basically, we can see that if they arrive at this stage, their policy can be related to the social welfare policy, right? So basically, when we refer to the state that can arrive at this stage, so basically we can refer to the modern welfare state, especially in the European state or the US, the Canada, right? Japan also include in this part as well, because you can see that there could be a great balance of the civil liberty and political rights, and also the social and economic equality among the different part of the population. But generally, you can see that there could be a large number of states that they cannot, arrive at the phase of consolidation, right? It means that if they cannot move to the phase of consolidation, it means that their democracy to some extent is not stable, right? It's not stable because maybe to some extent people are very skeptical, right? I mean, they are very doubtful about the performance of the government, whether the government can work effectively in order to respond to the need or the will of the people or not, right? So in that way, maybe they are thinking about the other system that can be much more effective, okay, in order to satisfy the demand and the need for the expectation of the people, right? So that's why you can see that just only a number of states, right? And in Southeast Asia, we cannot have any democratic country where they can produce the stable democracy yet, right? They cannot arrive at the phase of consolidation because there could be a lot of undermining factors that they need to overcome, right? That we already discussed regarding the bureaucracy, public administration, corruption, social and economic problems, right? And also the ideal political culture or political values that we need to establish, right? Because you can see in the European state, before they can have a good political culture, you can see that how many years that they can arrive at, like 100, more than 100 years, right? In order to move the political interest of the people from the material interest or economic interest of an individual to the post-material value. That is thing about the interest of the public, right? If they participate in politics, so basically they work for the interest of the society as a whole, not just only their individual interest. So we need time, right? We need time, but it does not mean that we need to have 100 years or 200 years like those countries as well. It depends, right? Because so far you can see that the process of democratization could be slow because there could be some factors that undermine the democratic change, like they limit the participation among different groups, right? Or there could be some sort of imperialism or colonialism policy that invade the other state, or there could be some other a problem as well, right? That they want to fulfill their ambition, right? But right now you can see that all of those factors can be removed, and even the political ideology contestation could not be the agenda of the foreign policy of the superpower, right? So you can see they don't care much about whether in what system that you practice, but the most important thing is the economic development. So all of this, you can see that it can be some important conducive factors that lead to the democratic change if in different contexts, if they are really committed, or if they are truly willing to work on the democratic change in the society. So maybe they don't have to spend like 100 years, but maybe 10 years or 20 years or 50 years, and then maybe they can arrive at the stage that we can say that it moved beyond it can be they get closer to the phase of consolidation. So it means that they can satisfy the need and the interest of the people, and possibly they tend to work more on the social security, social welfare policy that care much about the underprivileged group, right? To reduce the gaps between the rich and the poor. And then possibly you can see that maybe they can speed up the process of democratization, right? So, but again, like what I told you, it can be based on the a great amount of the different factors that need to combine together in order to produce a good democratic development in the society. Right, and we move to the theoretical part. Okay, so basically it can be used to explain the democratic change and persistence. So we will look at modernization theory and cultural theory, and last one, institutional theory. Okay. Right, so can anyone from group 6 explain the modernization theory?
Yes, Charles.
So the modernization theory is stressed on the interaction between social, economic, and political factors. It's about the process of technological and economic development that result in the change society, which contribute to the industrialization, urbanization, social, and education. That's all, teacher.
Okay, thank you so much. So basically, you can see that maybe at first this theory tend to focus more on the supremacy of the economic development, right? That economic development can be the precondition for democratic change. But later they tend to observe about some other factors that can be directly impacted as a result of the economic development. And it led to the modernization in the society. So in that way, you can see that the recent focus can be shift toward the modernization theory that take a broader view regarding the economic developments that have a strong connection to the fundamental change in the other area in the society, for example, like industrialization, urbanization, and geographical mobility and education. So all of this, you can see that it can be, conducive to the democratic change, right? Because it really aligns with what we can see that capitalist group do in order to work on those activities. But generally, you can see that they work for their own interests, but it benefit to the society as a whole, and it can be considered as the backbone of the democratic practice in their context, right? Because you can see that it led to the social, economic, and political changes as a result of the economic and technological developments, right? So, but this rather than solely focus on the economic development, so you can see that on the modernization, you can see that there could be some sort of interaction, right, between social, economic, and political factors as a result of the, the modernization of the society, right? So, and then you can see that it led to democracy. So in this sense, to some extent, we can see democracy can be both a consequence of the economic development. It can be very blurred for us. Democracy, economic, democracy can be both, right? This can be also the economic development. Okay. But basically, you can see that the theory strongly supported by the theory that I discussed earlier. So you can see, generally, you can see based on the activity of the capitalist group, that will be the rise of the capitalist group who do some sort of activity in order to press the democratic change. Right? So generally, you can see that because generally they try to extend democratic change development based on the experience of the Western European states, right? So to some extent, you can see that it can be very broad and it can make a generalization of the democratic change or democratic development in some other contexts, because like what we already discussed earlier as well. In some contexts, you can see that there could be some sort of democratic establishment before the industrialization. So I think and in some context they want the of social, economic, and political establishment simultaneously at the same time, rather than they work separately. So actually they combine together in a single policy package that work on those important stages. You can see in many states, in several countries that if you look at their policies, you can see that the policy work on to reform those areas at the same time, right? I mean, they they do not separate it into in different policy or actually in different areas. They work at the same time to improve those situations, those factors, those areas. By the way, you can see that we may this theory can be also clarified the you know the ignorance of the cultural and social factors in some context that maybe you can see in some context people do some sort of you know mass movement, right? Maybe the revolution rising for the marketing government, right? That's why we at the cultural theories that can have to say from group 7, explain this one.
Hello, Chuck. So the theory of cultural theory stress that the expectation, both expectation and demand of the citizen is the crucial for democracy, and the publication of the books that is called Civil Cultures in 1963 by both Gabriel Amon and Sidney Volba. They view the form of this approach as the to survive the democracy. It's when the mixtures of political and social orientation characterize its citizens that include one is government and also the expectation correctly treated by it. And moreover, the mixtures of both pragmatism and commitment, and also the idea of the citizen who wish to participate in order to let government to hear their voice when expressing them is also survives the democracy as well. And that is all for the cultural theory.
Right, thank you so much. So you can see that we need to have a good political culture or political attitude or behavior or political values, right, among the different political actors in that society, right? So it means that they can participate meaningfully in the politics in order to support the democratic system, right? So in that way, you can see that this theory expects the fact that it is important that every government system need to prove that the expectation and the demand of the people can be satisfied, right? So by this, if democracy can be strongly believed that it can use to satisfy the demand or the expectation of the people, because you can see that when we talk about democracy, I try to focus on how people can participate, right? People can choose their political leader. People can have more opportunity to compete for public office, right? So, buddy, you can see that this kind of expectation or demand can be crucial for democratic change in their society, because they believe that if the political leader doesn't work effectively, right, they cannot govern the society well, and then they have alternative, right? They can vote for a new political leader. So that's why you can see that there could be a political change or political some sort of democratic development in some society as well. By this, you can see that democracy, when we talk about the how to make a stable democracy, you can see democracy basically can survive when people can be categorized by a mixture of political and social orientation. So basically, it means that we talk about a good political culture, a good political attitude and political behavior, especially like what I already mentioned about the political values, okay, that people may participate in order to work for the interests of the society rather than, you know, the material interest of an individual or just only a specific group, right? Because when they just work or participate in political activity in order to pursue their group interest or their individual interest, you can see that it will not reflect to the real value of democracy, that democracy work for the interest of the people, right? The majority of the people, right? So in that way, you can see that it is important that we need to have those kind of good political culture. Right? So we want to have a civic culture, like what I already mentioned. Generally, we have four kind of political culture. We have parochial culture, PAROCHAIL, right? Parochial culture. So this kind of culture is not good for political participation because basically maybe the government can provide the political rights, political access to everyone into society. But the problem is that in the parochial culture, people lack political knowledge, right? They don't have enough knowledge in order to understand the political process the government work, or even they cannot, you know, what we call a strong efficacy of the government. I mean, like they don't know how to evaluate the performance of the government. They cannot evaluate the policy of the government, right? So they don't understand that. And if they don't completely understand that, how could they know whether they should support that kind of activity of the state, or how they want to participate in that to demand for change from the government, right? So it can be very difficult. And then you can see that because the lack of political knowledge, right? So you can see there could be some political party can manipulate the you know, the political attitude and the political behavior of, you know, a different group in the society, and then it creates some sort of problem, right? Like a branch wars, right? So you can see to some extent we can find in our society that there could be some political party try to manipulate some people who lack political knowledge, right? And then, you know, do some sort of activity that is not logical, it's not appropriate, not appropriate, not appropriate, right? So that's can be the problem, right? Or the second type of political culture can be, you know, a subject culture, right? It's like IS307 subject. A subject culture here can be referred to the kind of a political culture whereby, of course, people this time they may have enough political knowledge in politics, right? So they understand how the government work, right? And they know how to evaluate the performance and the policy of the state. They may produce, right, a meaningful political participation. But the point is that the problem is that they cannot participate, right? Why? Because there could be political restriction from the government, right? So the government tend to restrict their a political activity, right? So maybe they restrict the civil society participation, or they restrict an individual rights, right? So they cannot, they are not free to express their political opinion, right? Or produce any constructive input uh, to the policy of the state, right? So this can be the problem, right? This can be found in third world countries, right? That many governments, right, try to manipulate or restrict the political right of an individual or any groups, right? But generally, actually, the people can be knowledgeable about the politics as well. And the third type of political culture, you can see that we can refer to a participant culture. And you may hear the word participant culture as a good political culture, because when we talk about democracy, we want to promote political participation, right? So in that sense, it is very important that the government can allow people to participate freely in the government affair. But the problem is that people are knowledgeable, right? They are knowledgeable about politics, and the government also allows more opportunity for the different group in order to participate in the government affair. But the problem is that they participate too much, right? And when they participate too much, it creates a lot of problem, create a lot of barriers to the government, because to some extent, maybe there could be some group who capture, right, like they kidnap the government in order to adopt the policy in order to favor their group interest. That can be the problem, right? Because you can see that the way that they participate does not reflect the ideal value, but actually just only their material value. So this can be something, the problem for the political participation. So in that sense, you can see that the last type of political culture is important, the civic culture, right? That of course, people are knowledgeable about politics and they can participate in politics. Not have to participate all the time, right? Because they have what? Rights in the government, right? Because they have a high level of trust. They believe that the government can be accountable, right? The government can be accountable enough to make a decisive impact on the policy formulation and policy implementation. So if the government can do that, so why do they have to participate more, right? Because the government can do something in order to reflect their group interest, right? Or the interest of the society. So they don't have to participate all the time, right? So in that way, you can see that we need to have a civic culture that can produce a stable democracy, that they have a good political and social orientation, or they has a good mixture of pragmatism and commitment, right? So to some extent, they don't have to deal with a specific issue based on the political dogma, but actually it can be based on the important or you know a real situation that they encounter. So it can be based on the logical need or the actual situation that they need to use a high level of pragmatism, right? That they address some issue not based on the rule or based on the any kind of the custom or tradition, but actually based on the actual need or the current situation, right? So by this you can see all of this can be important, right? That we need to have a good cultural and social factors that can produce a stable democracy as well. Okay. Okay. By the way, you can see that this theory can be criticized by taking the institutional arrangement or political factor for granted, right? So actually, because possibly we need to have a good institutional arrangements, okay, that leads to the stable democracy as well, okay. So by this, let's move to the last theory in terms of institutional theory. So can anyone from group 8 explain this one?
Hello, teacher. So institutional theory is a theory that studies how the process of social structure is established as a authoritative guideline for social behavior, which include norms, rules, scheme, and routine. The theory has two schools of thought, which is old institutionalism and new institutionalism. So the theory assumption is that a social actor institution is also a big social actor. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much for your contribution. Okay, by this you can see that the institutional theory try to assure that the citizen, cannot develop, some sort of civic culture or any kind of a good political attitude or behavior or even political value by themselves, right? So actually, those opportunity or those possibility can be based on the institutional framework of the government and politics that allow them to, participate freely and can produce a good outcome of the political participation, right? So by this you can see that those kind of social and cultural factors can be strongly conditioned by the institutional arrangement of the government and politics. So without this, so how could people participate or meaningfully? For example, you can see if the civil rights in terms of freedom of assembly and association are protected. So how could people can form into a group or a political party that can ensure the integrity of the political participation or political competition, right? So it is impossible, right? So it can be based on the institutional framework of the government and the politics. And if the court are not independent of the government, so how can we ensure rule of law, right? So actually, because we want to have a rule of law, democracy generally embody the constitutionalism, the rule of law. The law is about everyone, right? So no one can abuse or violate the law. If they violate the law, even the king or even the prime minister, right? They need to be punished by the law as well, right? So it means that everyone is equal to law. Right? Arrangement that all of the important value of the economic participation and political participation or political competition, right? So can be strongly conditioned based on the institutional framework of the government and politics. Right? So in that sense, you can see that the institutional theory has a great emphasis on the relevance of the institutional arrangement for democracy, especially the democratic change and democratic consolidation. So by this, you can see that the theory are based on the idea that people can make certain choice and develop certain attitude and value because of the alternative available. And generally, you can see that this can be strongly conditioned by the institution of the government and the politics, right? All right, so in short, you can see that there could be different theory that try to explain the democratic change and democratic consolidation. But in short, we can say that we need a proper amount of the combination of these important factors in terms of economic factors, in terms of political factors, and also social and cultural factors that need to combine together in order to produce a stable democracy, right? To create, not only democratic change, but also it's very important, especially the final stage, the democratic consolidation, right? Because there could be many states that cannot arrive at the final stage of the democratic change, right? Democratic consolidation, right? Because they need to work on the economic condition, right, in order to satisfy the need or the demand of different group. But at the same time, they need to produce, a civic culture, and also produce a good political attitude and political value for the people. But generally, you can see that it can be based on the institutional arrangement, constitutional design, and also the commitment from the politician as well, right? So they need to work together. So we need to have different political actors that work well with one another in order to produce, a fruitful outcome of the political participation and also political competition. Okay. All right, so I come to the end of my lecture. So if you have any question, you can raise it now. Okay. So do you have any question? Hello, everyone. Do you have any question?
For me, no, sir.
Okay. How about the other?
No, sir.
Okay ខ្ញុំគិតថាយើងប្រហែលជាអត់ដែរព្រោះចំណុចអស់ហ្នឹងគឺយើងបាន discuss គ្នាច្រើនហើយណាជាពិសេសនៅក្នុង chapter summary reflection ហើយឆ្លើយសំណួរខ្ញុំទៀតណាវាអត់មានអីថានេះទេ Alright so ចឹងអរគុណច្រើនអ្នកនរគ្នា thank you very much គេប៉ុន្តែខ្ញុំសូមខ្ញុំសូម download attendance link ខ្ញុំ check តាម Okay so thank you so much for your attention and participation.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I'm in Hanoi, man.
Could you explain about video project a little bit?
Video project?
Yep. Could you explain that?
Video យើងគ្រាន់តែដូចថាយើងចង់បានហ្នឹងគឺខ្ញុំចង់ឲ្យយើងថាយើងធ្វើតែ written assignment សរសេរអញ្ចឹងមានតែយើងធ្វើ research អីជាមួយនេះមកហើយយើង structure វាមកហើយយើងយកមកធ្វើ present វាដូចហើយតែគ្រាន់តែយើងធ្វើ present ហើយយើងថតជា video ប៉ុន្តែគ្រាន់តែយើងរៀងយើង can be more creative អីអញ្ចឹងណាយើងអាចមានជា animation ឬក៏យើងមាន picture អីយើងកាត់ចូលមកណាឬក៏យើងហើយណាមួយយើងត្រូវមាន movements ណាយើងយករូបភាពយើង present នឹងខ្លះមកកាត់ដូចជានេះធ្វើជា video advertisement ឬក៏យើងអាចថាអីដែលយើងនេះអញ្ចឹងណាអាហ្នឹងយើងមើលទៅ video ដែលយើងធ្លាប់ធ្វើកន្លងមកដូចជាវាអត់នេះទេពី10នាទីទៅ20នាទីណាប៉ុន្តែគ្រាន់តែខ្ញុំមាន guided question ហើយ topic assign ហ្នឹងឲ្យយើង work យើង research សិនមកហើយយើងគ្រាន់តែយើង prepare អាចម្លើយអស់ហ្នឹងប៉ុន្តែយើងយកមកធ្វើនៅក្នុង video យើងថតខ្លះអីខ្លះទៅយើងបញ្ចូលរូបភាពខ្លះអីខ្លះទៅឬក៏យើងមានជា animation អីខ្លះយើងឃើញហើយមកកណោយើង search ទៅ YouTube មកយើងឃើញរបៀបថាយើងធ្វើជា video ដើម្បីជាអាចថាជា video contents ដើម្បីយើង influence public reaction ឬក៏ public opinion យ៉ាងម៉េចអីចឹងតែនេះវាដូចជា knowledge sharing អីចឹងណាគេអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំគិតថាវាដូចជា video ទូទៅដែរទេប៉ុន្តែគ្រាន់តែយើង creative ប៉ុណ្ណាក្នុងការដែលយើងធ្វើឲ្យបញ្ចូលអា content ឬក៏ topic ដែលយើង research ហ្នឹងណាអូខេហើយអញ្ចឹងយើងសាកធ្វើវាសិនទៅហើយចាំមើលជួបកន្លែងណាចាំថាពិបាកកន្លែងណាចាំនេះ approach ខ្ញុំទៀតប៉ុន្តែគ្រាន់ថាជាទូទៅយើងអាច learn ណាពីអា video editing ហ្នឹងតែយើងធ្វើមកប៉ុន្តែវាមាន app ដែលយើងអាចធ្វើបានដូចជាvideo ដែលអាចកាត់ app ដែលកាត់ត video ហ្នឹងវាជាអីiMovie ឬក៏អីចឹងណាយើងអាច download វាទៅហើយយើងសាកធ្វើជាមួយ team យើងសិនទៅព្រោះអាហ្នឹងវា free ហើយវាអាចមាន function ច្រើនធ្វើឲ្យយើងអាចកាត់វាឬក៏អីចឹងទៅប៉ុន្តែវាអត់មានអីពិបាកទេព្រោះយើងកាត់ពី 3000 ពាក្យនៅក្នុងការសរសេរមកធ្វើត្រឹម10នាទីយ៉ាងខ្លីណាខ្ញុំថាបើសិនយើងមិនអាចធ្វើវែងទេ10នាទីបានហើយព្រោះខ្ញុំក៏មិនចង់បានវែងខ្ញុំចង់ឲ្យយើងសាកល្បងធ្វើវាប៉ុន្តែសំខាន់បញ្ចូលអា topic ហ្នឹងឲ្យវាបានចូលទៅដល់ audience របស់យើងណាអញ្ចឹងវាដូចតែយើងសរសេរទេប៉ុន្តែយើងគ្រាន់ថាយើងយកវាមកថតវិញណាធ្វើជា video content វិញអូខេអញ្ចឹងយើងសាកល្បងធ្វើវាសិនទៅណាព្រោះមែនតើទៅវាថ្មីសម្រាប់គ្នាយើងខ្លះមួយចំនួនប៉ុន្តែក៏ជាមិនជារឿងថ្មីពេកសម្រាប់គ្នាយើងមួយចំនួនដែរព្រោះយើងឃើញអីដូចvideo ដើម្បីយើង explain A1 ណា explain IS ណាយើងឃើញគេធ្វើថត video អញ្ចឹងទៅសកម្មភាពផ្នែកនេះផ្នែកនោះបញ្ចូល point នេះ point នោះអីចឹងយើងបញ្ចូលរូបភាពខ្លះអីខ្លះហើយនឹងមានជាaction នៅក្នុង scene ខ្លះទៅហើយមានរូបភាពយើងដែលជាចម្បងដែរអូខេមានសំណួរអីទៀតទេ
ចឹងយើងគ្រាន់តែដល់ញ៉ៃ present ចាក់ទៅ video ហើយយើងមានអ្នកអធិប្បាយក្នុង video ហ្នឹងហើយស្រាប់
ហ្នឹងថ្ងៃហ្នឹងយើងគ្រាន់តែ display video ទៅហើយមែនតើទៅដល់ពេលចុងក្រោយប្រហែលជា10នាទីទៅ5នាទីយើងមាន Q&A អញ្ចឹងបើ audience របស់យើងឬក៏ខ្ញុំអាចមានសំណួរសួរប៉ុន្តែយើងត្រូវអាចឆ្លើយបានទៅតាមហ្នឹងព្រោះវាអត់មានអីចេញឆ្ងាយពីអ្វីដែលយើង research ហ្នឹងទេដូចគ្រាន់តែយើង present ដែរប៉ុន្តែយើងគ្រាន់តែចាក់ហ្នឹងទៅហើយចាំយើង Q&A អញ្ចឹង Q&A យើងសំខាន់ដែរគប់ផ្សំរបស់យើង display video ហ្នឹងបើសិនយើងអត់បាន display ហើយក៏អត់បាន Q&A អញ្ចឹងយើងបាត់5%អញ្ចឹងវាសំខាន់គឺយើង reach deadline អាហ្នឹង Okay មានសំណួរអីទៀតទេ Okay next week group 1ត្រូវធ្វើ presentation ណាតិចអត់ដឹងអញ្ចឹងយើង be ready ទៅហើយ
Sure
បាទ
អាទិត្យក្រោយholiday ថ្ងៃសុក្រ
ចុង holiday ទៀត
ចូលពេលហ្នឹងក៏ Sure
អូខេអូខេបើ holiday យើងតាមនោះយើង skip ហ្នឹងប៉ុន្តែចាំមើលអ្នកស្ដែងយើងរកមើលពេលវេលាណាថែមវិញអីមិនអីប៉ុន្តែអូខេgroup 1 will be ready for that ហើយនៅ first session ហើយ second session គឺធម្មតាទេខ្ញុំមាន lecture short lecture ហើយខ្ញុំមានជាយើងនៅតែមាន summary ហើយនឹង reflection អញ្ចឹងហើយយើងមានឆ្លើយសំណួរជា group អីអញ្ចឹងទៅហើយអា lecture របស់ខ្ញុំហ្នឹងអាចយកមកដើម្បី revisit point ដែលយើងបាន discuss ហើយគ្រាន់យើងមានសំណួរយើង bring for our discussion អញ្ចឹងហ្មងទៅអញ្ចឹងវាអត់មានអីដូចនេះទេគឺយើង go through the same you know structure of our class ដែលយើងមាន so far ដែលខ្ញុំតែងតែឲ្យ lecture ហ្នឹងប៉ុន្តែស្របពេលហ្នឹងគ្នាយើងមាន presentation ទៅលើ cases in comparative politics វាតកតងជាមួយនឹង specific state ណាដូចថា UK US អីចឹងអូខេមានសំណួរអីទៀតឬក៏មាន concern អីទៀតទេអ្នកនរគ្នាអត់អីណា Okay enjoy your day after the class enjoy your dinner right? And also enjoy your weekend as well and I hope you can cope with the difficult situation ណា during the lockdown ហ្នឹងណាហើយកុំព្យាយាមចេញអីមិនចាំបាច់ណាអូខេតែយើងមានអីដែលធ្វើនៅក្នុងផ្ទះដែលអាចជួយ chill out ណា completely relax ណាកុំឲ្យវាអាចថា physically healthy ប៉ុន្តែវាត្រូវ mentally healthy ដែរណាអញ្ចឹងយើងត្រូវធ្វើម៉េចកុំឲ្យយើងមានអារម្មណ៍តានតឹងអីចឹងណា Okay អរគុណច្រើនអ្នកនរគ្នា see you guys have a good weekend everyone so live with you